It's good to
Hello,
see you.
sweetie. Yeah, thanks. Nice to be seen. How are you doing? How's everything?
I'm much better now. Thank you so much for doing this. I know being on the road, this is arduous. Tell us where you are right now.
In Atlanta, we have two shows back to back in the same place.
Where are you performing?
Oh, I've no idea.
Some venue somewhere.
It's some soundstage. And but we're doing that tonight and tomorrow, recording it for a live album. And then we got the rest of the year off. So
Really?
yeah, it's cool. Been a very
So
big year.
you've been on the road a lot.
Yeah.
And does it feel like old times or does it still feel different with the pandemic stuff?
No, it's old times. I mean, you hit the ground running. It's what you do. And it's like being a greyhound, on a racetrack. It's like they just shout go and you go. There is no, it's nothing new. The whole thing's about getting where you're supposed to go and play. And the times trying to get where you're going can be as much fun as being on stage. It's a great thing, honestly. Left to my own devices, I just stare at the wall. So it's great to be out and doing things.
I don't think that's true, though. I saw the documentary, John Waite, The Hard Way. By the way, congratulations. It's just wonderful. I have to say that when I first saw that it was directed by Mike Nichols, I got really confused because I know he's dead. But this is a different Mike Nichols.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. I never thought of that.
Yeah, I saw it. Directed by Mike Nichols. Oh my gosh, this is going to be a very serious film.
Mike Nichols. But yeah, I had nothing to do with it other than being interviewed. I refused to have any input on the edit or watch it. It was a stipulation of me doing it. I didn't want it to be a puff piece that was there to make me look good. If they wanted to film me, they could come into my life. They had 4 days and nothing was off the table. And I tried to be as honest as possible, but I didn't want to know anything about how it looked. Or the
That is so, and at what period, how long ago did you film it? Your interview part?
A year, maybe a bit more. It was smack dab in the middle of the pandemic, which coded everything. It was like we were in lockdown. So everything was darker, I mean, just seeing someone to talk to was a relief. So, and the guy who did the interviews, I've known him for like 30 years. So I think I opened up quite a lot more than I would have done normally. And the fact that it was a pandemic and there was, it was a darker time. There's a shot there's a shot in the movie where I'm sort of staring off Palisades Park into the sea and there's nobody there. It's like after the bomb drops. Yeah. It's like, on the beach. It's so strange, but it did color the documentary. It did. It had a big effect on it.
Yes, I think it did. And I think it captures a point in time an unusual point in time in that the entire world was going through the same thing. There aren't too many things we can say that about.
Yeah, it was like a unity that we didn't want.
That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
And so do you feel, I don't feel free yet completely. I'm doing a lot more than I did, but do you feel free now?
Well, I got sick when I flew back from Holland. I flew back from England, actually. I went from Holland on tour to England to see my mum, and then flew to New York and then to Boston to play the State Fair. And I think I got sick on the plane or in Boston, but I've been sick for like 6 weeks.
Oh,
and I'm just over it. And so I don't think it's time to I mean, it's made a big comeback in Europe. In Britain, there's a new version of it that's really kind of dangerous. I don't think we're done with it.
Stop. I'm finally going. I'm going to London and Paris for the first time in April. Snuffy and I are going. And so we're going to be picking your brain like crazy, but I've been terrified. I haven't been on a plane yet. And now there's a new one in London. Don't tell me this.
No, it's okay. Just wear a mask.
Yeah,
just
I do.
When you fly, get a decent mask. And, I think the chances of getting it are a lot more probable if you're on an aeroplane and if you're on for an extended amount of time. But I think walking around, shaking hands, being around people, if you're vaccinated, I think it's kind of I think it's going to be fine.
Well, do you think you got sick flying, or do you think you got sick doing meet and greets and being close to people and all?
But we it's an occupational hazard with me.
Right.
You meet everybody, and you're sort of like in the thick of the crowd, and you're traveling, so you're up against it. But I'm fully vaccinated, so I think maybe what I got was maybe that other thing that's going around.
And so, it's an occupational hazard when you're a singer to have a respiratory thing. So has that been a real struggle for you through this period?
We did in Cincinnati. It was a wonderful gig in this tremendous building. It was like something out of Abraham Lincoln. And my voice was kind of like it was half there, then it wasn't really, then it was almost all there. And that's the first time that's happened to me, I don't know, 20 years. And it was weird. And I realized halfway through that the audience was kind of willing me on, that as long as you're trying as hard as you can, the audience will love you. If you're walking around going like, I can't do this, that isn't what you're there for. But I think as long as it's a passionate performance, that I just went for it. I almost got through a whole lot of love. I mean, it's like,
I heard you do that. I saw a video. It's fabulous.
Yeah, you see, yeah, it's easy to sing. It's just the travel that's sometimes it can knock you out. But
so tell us about this live album. What's the do you have a theme? Do you have do you have a set list, or are you just going for it?
No, we're going for it. We have like about 25 songs we can pick from. And we just got back from Holland and we recorded like 4 gigs there. We had Renus Gerritsen from Golden Earring get up and jam with us. So, there's a lot of things that are worth keeping. And the audiences were a big audience. And we did really well. It was a big turnout. So there's those tapes being mixed at the moment to see what we've got. And we've been recording odd shows. And with the Christmas holidays coming up, I'll have time to look at it and see what we've got.
And so is this what you do normally? Like you're in the moment, you have okay, there are 25 songs we can choose from. Yeah. I'm in the mood to do this now. And you
Oh yeah. I mean, there's there's like 6 songs you have to play, no matter what. There's the baby stuff and there's obviously some of the big singles, but there's more to the set than that. If you take people on a trip, they go with you. Mm-hmm. We start off unplugged. Me and Mark go out with 2 acoustics and play a couple of songs, and then the band comes out and we pick up that song halfway through as a full band. And you sort of take the audience into this trip. To come out and just play the hits and sort of say like, hey, see, you buy a t-shirt, doesn't really interest me. I like the thing about challenging the audience. I mean, no matter where we're playing, in the middle of the set, we stop and I do Bluebird Cafe with Mark unplugged. And you could hear a pin drop,
Aww.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a lovely song. And I want to entertain people as well. If you listen to something at number 8 on the volume all the way through the set, you end up thinking about like, should you get a beer or a cup of coffee? Should I have a hamburger? Keep people on their toes to get more out of the set. And we have such a lot of great songs. But I throw in a couple of the obscure things for myself. I love them,
John, do you talk to the audience when you're doing a show?
Yeah, I do. And
I love that so much.
That we were playing in New York City about a month ago, and we had a sold out show. And it was storming outside. It was torrential rain, and it was packed, which is very unusual when it rains in New York. People stay. Right. And this guy, I'm playing this song and just warming up, saying hi, This guy shouts, "I saw you play at Siberia," which is in the subway. It was a small bar in the subway.
Mhm.
And I took my band and played in the subway. And I ended up having a conversation on the mic with this guy about 4 seats back. And it was really engaging. And there was people chipping in. Now, you can overdo that because people have come to see you play.
Right.
But the conversation is so, it's tailored. It's not tailored, but it's shot through the songs. I mean, a song like Downtown, which is written about New York City, that would have an aspect of playing in Siberia and that New York that was there. And Anthony Bourdain went into Siberia because it was such a dive bar, but it was a bohemian kind of hangout. But it all sort of coalesced, all these opinions and bits of information become part of the performance of Downtown. So you couldn't it's better to have that sporadic thing with the audience where you answer a question and then the whole audience goes with you.
Is there a point in the show, I don't get that this is going to be true, but is there a point in the show where you always talk to the audience like you're going to, you don't seem to.
I never know what's coming next. I haven't got any set thing I say to the audience. I explain Bluebird Cafe, the story behind it, because the song works better. But the story is slightly different every night. And I leave bits out and I put bits in. I don't have a script. And I think if you don't have a script, you're going to have something that's real happening with the audience.
Absolutely.
If it's a dialogue that you've rehearsed, it's just, what's the point? You might as well just play the song. But I like that thing where it's just hanging by a thread. There's that challenge with the audience where they can go with you, or they can get pissed off. I really don't know. I remember once being on stage explaining the song, somebody shouted something like, "Shut up and sing!" And I went, so you walk in a tightrope.
That's hysterical. I'm sure you remember back in the village, back in the day when folk singers would play along Bleecker Street, and there was the story behind pretty much every song, and that's kind of the way the set was constructed, and it's so wonderful. Well, you brought up a couple of times Bluebird Cafe and telling the story. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to tell us a version of that story right now. How did that song come to be?
Well, it's a long time ago, but I was in Nashville, and I'd gone down there to write some songs. I'd written 6 songs in 6 days, and this guy called Danny Lowry had driven 200 miles to work with me, and I was tapped. And he had this line, "Young hearts can fly restless and wild." It was over a G chord, I think, or a C. And I tried a couple of things. We got together in the studio. He's a great guy. We got on like a house of fire, but I had nothing. I was tapped, and we went down to the Crab Shack, which is it's not there anymore, but you could sit outside. It was 12 o'clock. We had a beer. We kind of gave up, actually. And this beautiful girl came out of nowhere, this Iranian girl. She's about 17, 18. And she was going to go and sing with a boyfriend at the Acer Clubs that night. That's no longer there either. But as I was watching her, I kind of wondered what her backstory was, how she got to Nashville. Where did she come from? Did she travel to Nashville? Was she born there? And if you were traveling to Nashville from Canada or Cleveland or New York City, where would you go when you got there? What's it like for a girl that age, And I thought about the Bluebird Cafe because they have an open mic night. And if I was that person, I would head for the Bluebird and hope that I got discovered. So I put the two things together. I tried to write her backstory. I write, she says she's 21, but she's just 17. Her apron says Mary, but her real name is Jean. Working cleaning tables off at the local Dairy Queen, but she's the real thing. And then his line, "Young hearts can fly restless and wild." Then I put in, "But she'll get out of this town someday. She's got the will, she'll find her way to the stage of the Bluebird Cafe." Yeah.
Did that come easy to you?
Yeah. It was a piece of cake. It took maybe an hour and a half.
Wow.
Once you know what you're writing for or what you're looking for, it's like you got a flashlight and you flash it onto this, and it's there in a dark room. You don't see anything else but what you're going for. And if you're writing sort of like without a point, you could be there for a week, you know. But it's the inspiration of not. It's the unexpected.
Do you ever labor, or is any of your work laborious? I mean, do you ever sit down with a song and you start with a great lyric and then you don't know where to take it, or a piece of music? Does that happen? It doesn't sound like it does to you.
No, it doesn't. It does in bands. It did in Bad English, you know, with stuff. And you'd have this idea of where it should go. Then somebody would play the wrong chord or start trying to take over, and it would just go no. But that's like being in a band. You have to sort of like go with that stuff in a band, but you don't when you're solo. And the trade to be in a band is that I suppose you have help to write, but the work isn't going to be as focused. It's going to be something else.
I assume you prefer doing your own thing. Yeah.
I would never do it again. It's just ridiculous, you know.
Tell us the story about touring with Ringo and his All-Star Jam, because that's something that was a decision you made that I think was a mixed blessing for you.
Yeah, it was kind of strange because, you know, you're in a band full of people that are sort of just as excited as you are to be there. And there's a feel of panic, you know, everybody's trying to sort of, you know, I'm with you, Ringo, and I'm from the Northwest. So I would probably say something dry, you know, thinking you would get it. And sometimes he didn't, you know, it's like he is Ringo. And, but you know, yeah, it was very competitive, you know, it's like.
And there were a lot of egos. There's a lot of egos going on.
It was ridiculous, you know. I went to play bass. I didn't really want to sing. And I had to be kind of like, you know, get up and sing a couple of songs and sing harmony. But there's enough going on that stage to keep you occupied for a long time. There's a lot of different people coming to the table with their own songs from entirely different styles. And then the Ringo stuff. And, you know, that's a big gig. I mean, maybe that kind of thing would work better with a core band playing with Ringo and just singers getting up and singing a couple of songs and Ringo doing his thing. But to do both, to play an instrument and then play other people's songs and then sing harmony and then, you know, be in this crowd of people that are all going nuts because we're around Ringo, it's a tough thing.
So what was it like, though, John, to have Ringo playing on Missing You? Come on.
Yeah, no. Absolutely insane. There's just an insane thing. I mean, it's like full circle, you know. When I was about 9, there's Ringo in the Beatles, and he was the most kind of lovable Beatle because he was like the rest of us, you know. He was on the drums and he was like funny and stuff, you know. And yeah, so and being a bass player, you know, the first thing you look at when you look at a band is the drummer. Absolutely. So there were big shoes. You know, I never forgot that no matter how good it got, he played with Paul McCartney. And there's somebody that's like Sting tenfold, you know, it's like, you know, and so there was that thing of always trying to be as good as you could be every single moment to bring it for Ringo, you know.
So there was a story when you were on that tour about walking outside of Radio City Music Hall and running into somebody.
I've completely forgotten that story.
Well, there was a Beatle on the street.
Oh, God, yeah, Paul. It's the day of Radio City. We'd done the sound check, and I was just wandering around, you know, between the avenues, just trying to keep my head clear. You know, Radio City is a big deal. And walking towards me was Paul and his ex-wife. And, you know, I mean, I'm already dealing with working with Ringo, and I'm trying to just, you know, this is very serious, John, you know, stay focused. And as we got closer, he looked at me right in the eyes and raised his eyebrow, like, you know, hey, John. And I just went like, you know, hey, how you doing? I kept walking. I could not deal with 2 Beatles in one I couldn't do it. I honestly couldn't do it. And I'm a huge fan of Paul's, and he's a tremendous guy and all that. But I think he got it. It's.
I really hope that one day you have the opportunity to speak to him about that in person.
I'm sure he knew. It's a high pressure thing, man. If I sign up for something, I give it 100%, and I don't really sign up for anything. Ringo was the exception. I thought, well, he was.
So looking back, even though there were challenges to it, are you still glad that you did it?
Yeah, sure. I've done a lot of things in my life that just I came out of nowhere that I was on a course to do. So they show up at different times. You meet somebody that you've really admired, or you meet somebody that's going to change your life at that moment. And all this stuff seems preordained, whether it is or not.
I was just going to ask you that, because I'm a fatalist. Do you believe that things happen that are supposed to happen?
I honestly do. And I don't know why, because everything is so chaotic. But the stuff that arrives when you're in the deepest need, or when you need someone to put their hand on your shoulder and tell you it's okay, it happens. And I think sometimes people of like mind, you connect through the atmosphere or whatever, and you're kind of in orbit around the energy, and you just meet. I think it's almost like a planned thing. It's like
I believe that. I think that no matter what choice I make, if I was meant to meet John Waite, and I was meant to have this this Zoom relationship with you, John, and we were meant to have conversations.
Yeah, I really believe that. I mean, I met people along the way that I thought I would never meet, and it was good. It
was so interesting because the way I found you was Sandy Gennaro, our mutual friend, had posted something about you on LinkedIn, and I was like, wait, and then I reached out to you, and then that happened, and then it turns out we have so many mutual friends, Kenny Aronson, and so many other people from back in the day in New York. But yes, I do believe things are meant to be. Speaking of, before we get off the Ringo and Paul thing, the last time we spoke was in March, and you hadn't yet seen Get Back. Have you watched it since then?
No, not yet.
Oh, John.
I know.
As a Beatle fan, it's just something that I think it was so eye-opening and mind-blowing for me. My perceptions of each of them changed drastically.
Really?
Except for Ringo. He was the only one I got right before I saw it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's really something. I mean, I know it's extremely intimate, and I know it's the reverse side of the original movie.
It's very raw. It's very raw. It's very real. It is uncensored and a little scary sometimes to see how intense their energy was. And
I mean, back to Ringo. I mean, he walks. I mean, apparently the story is, I mean, that footage where Paul's playing the bass and he's writing "Get Back" in front of George and Ringo, and they just, Ringo's going like, yeah, and then they're sort of like just sitting there, and Paul's hammering out this song. And the story is that when they went to cut it, Ringo just went behind the kit and played it all on the snare, just like that.
You can watch that happen in this documentary. But you actually watch that song get written.
Yeah, but that's my point. I mean, something like that, talking about preordained stuff. I was just saying something the other day when they were looking at slides for the Rubber Soul album, they had a projector on the photograph that, I don't know, a card. They had a white and a small projector with slides, and the album cover is like convex, I think it is, because the card fell backwards, and it made all their faces look slightly elongated.
Wow.
I mean, stuff like that. It's a joke in some circles with big Beatle fans that, if somebody walks in the door and stubs their toe and shouts something, they write a song about it. And it's just like everything was just like that. The energy was such that those four individuals I mean, how could you get four individuals like that in the same city, like Liverpool, and they all play a role? The principals obviously being kind of John and Paul, but right behind them, there's George, who's this brilliant guy who turns the world onto Indian music and the whole thing, you know, Krishna consciousness. And then you got Ringo, that's kind of like the guy that's the glue. There's only so many people in the world that can play great drums, but you listen to everything he ever played, and there's nobody could have done that job but Ringo. He's that good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I totally just lost the question I was going to from here, but oh, I know what I was going to say. Do you remember when, well, we were kids, that whole thing about Paul is dead, and there was that whole rumor? Do you remember that, all of that?
Well, it was an American thing.
Oh, it was American.
It was very much that thing that, like, you know, that culture that was reading Rolling Stone and Cream magazine and Circus, and it was, I think that was much more of an American thing. The British wouldn't have gone for that.
I still every once in a while look at him and wonder.
No, how could you be that good, you know?
Well, that's true. That could never be duplicated, I'm sure. So John, let's talk about the documentary, John Waite, The Hard Way.
Yeah.
What did somebody come to you? Did you go to somebody? What's the birth of this?
Well, I had a friend of mine, Scott Wright, that used to work at Epic Records. We became good friends, and I even went to his wedding in New Orleans, and we stayed in touch over the years at dinner. And there was a Black Lives Matter protest in Portland that turned into a riot, and they started to burn Portland down. And he lived in Portland. And I got out of bed one morning, I thought, I wonder if Scott's okay. And I called him up and said, how are you doing? You know, he has a winery and stuff, you know. And he said, oh, I'm fine. And we started talking about the road and what I was doing and touring and recording. And he said, man, you've had a fascinating life, and it's hard to believe you're still, you know, swinging. And I said, yeah, you know, what else am I going to do? And he said, this would make a fabulous film, you know. And he said, well, you know, that's very nice, you know, that's very nice. Hope you will. Give my best to Martha, and I'll see you soon. And he called back about 6 weeks later, a month, 6, and he had the backing.
He had the backing.
Yeah, he had the money, and it's a lot of money. And I just sort of, I had to really think about it. But I said I would do it if I stayed away from it. He could come in and interview me and film me, and I would be as honest as I could be. But I wanted nothing whatsoever to do with the edit or how it looked, the graphics.
This is so unusual, John, because first of all, you're a visual artist. You're a fine artist. So I'm shocked that and impressed that you were able to step away from that side of it.
Yeah, but you get these documentaries, like, and they're all an homage to the artist. It's like, you know, they're a really great person, and maybe the careers aren't doing so well right now, but wait for this new record. And, you know, meanwhile, they're doing some charity event, and it's like, and it's nothing more than a promotional tool. And sat there during the editing, and they're calling the shots of what comes out finally. And I thought that would be incredibly boring, you know, where it's all positive. I drop the F-bomb just about every 30 seconds. Yeah,
my kind of guy.
Yeah, no, it's like, fuck out. And I get very passionate about stuff. I actually get emotional at one point.
I was going to say, there's that beautiful moment where, you know, where you had that moment. And I love the fact, I guess it was Scott on the other side of the interview there, who just kind of encouraged you to just go and have that moment. I mean, and they didn't cut it, and they didn't clean it up. And
that was the point. I mean, normally I would say, hey, come on, we don't need to put that in. That's extremely personal. But, you know, I'm a fan of films and directors, and I don't want to sound smart and start dropping names like Truffaut and all that stuff. And
don't sound smart.
No. I swear to God. But I do know as an artist that if you tamper with something, it's not going to have any strength at all.
Mhm.
You can't have too many cooks, and you certainly can't have the ego of the person who's the subject involved in the edit. That's insanity. So a condition of me doing this is that I'd have nothing to do whatsoever. They could come in and film me. They could, they set up a scene in a garden.
I was going to say it looked like it all happened in one sitting, but it didn't.
Oh, no, no, no,
Okay.
no. It
Mhm.
was 4 days, spread
Mhm.
out over a couple of weeks, months.
Oh.
Yeah. And, you know, coming to my condo, my girlfriend and the
Mhm.
whole thing. And you know, I look like shit, especially when it comes to the condo, because I mean, I hadn't been out for like 6 weeks or 6 months or whatever, you know. It was like, that's the COVID thing. And so
That was really impressive. Sorry for interrupting you, but that was really impressive to me, John, because you are a well-dressed man, as a certain group once said. And you're just, you've all through the years, you've had fabulous hair, you've had great clothes, you're
Oh.
incredibly put together, you have your earring that is iconic, and you are a man of fashion. And
you
so
almost said a dedicated
I
follower.
almost did.
You
But
almost did, yes, I know.
I almost did a Kingslayer, but the thing is that you're not a follower of fashion, you're a maker of fashion, which is why I caught myself. And I was so impressed that you did not control that in this film. I mean, you had no ego there. They didn't have to properly light you so that you had no lines on your face. You
No,
didn't
no.
wear the perfect outfit. Your hair
No.
wasn't perfectly coiffed.
Yeah.
You were just a regular person. So my hat's off to you, because that's very brave in this crazy world we live in.
Well, if you know, there was a lot of, I mean, at some point they asked about sex and drugs and all that, and I just, here it goes. And I put it on the table.
Mhm.
But they chose not to use that, and that
I
wasn't.
was going to say, I don't remember hearing anything about your sex life or your drug using in that film.
But it's you know, but as John Lennon said, when they asked him all this stuff about the Beatles and you know, Satyricon, he said, you know, why would I bring that up and hurt Yoko?
Hmm.
And I thought that was that's typical John Lennon, very sensitive guy. But I had nothing to do with that decision. I gave him a couple of funny asides.
Did you?
Yeah, I really did. I gave a couple of things naming nobody that, yes, that happened. And of course I did. And they chose not to use it. But
Okay, well, wait a minute. Come on, John. For the
No.
sake of conversation, you know, you didn't use them. They're not in the film. No one's going to hear it. There. Give us something. Tell us a story that's not in the film.
Oh, that's not in the film?
Yeah. Tell us a sex, drug, and rock and roll story that's not.
Why would I do it now and not in the documentary? And it's like, you know, people forget in the 60s and 70s. I mean, it was part of the culture. Everybody was walking around with drugs on them. And it wasn't like a dark, it was like a free society of a lot of different things going on at once. And we were all part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then as people clean up their acts, and it became a bit more like, well, you can't do that. It became more sort of criminalized, and then it became like, ooh. And so, you know, but I mean, I have no excuse for anything I've ever done. I did it with all my heart and I had a great time. I never set off to hurt anybody. I'm not evil, you know, but I've had.
Well, I don't want you to tell us a story that would hurt anybody, but come on, there has to be a story of some drug debauchery before a show or after a show or with somebody wonderful.
I don't think that's cool. I don't. I mean, I tell you what, I gave the director Scott and everybody the opportunity. I threw out a couple of things about, yeah, I did that, and I was there when that happened, and that was all. And then I thought, well, what's that? There's a line you don't really cross. There's a line.
You know something, John? I don't agree. I don't agree with that, because I believe, and from what you said in the documentary, when you didn't know they were going to make that choice, you said, I'm going to be completely authentic. I'm going to tell the honest truth. I'm going to do all this. Is what you see is what you get. And I don't believe there's ever a time other than if it's going to hurt somebody, where censorship serves anything, because your experience is probably my experience and maybe somebody else's experience, or maybe completely different, but
Right.
it unites us. Our experiences unite us and spark memories in each of us that, so I don't believe in censorship of any kind, unless
Well,
it's going to hurt
know,
somebody.
but I think this that you can edit yourself as you're describing.
Why?
Because I remember reading in Rolling Stone, there was an actress that was a famous actress. A star faded fairly fast.
Hmm?
She was doing an interview and she was actually talking. She was spilling all this stuff out. And it was like, did I really want to know that? And does she really honestly want other people to know that? Or are you looking for credibility in tearing away the facade of your persona to show something that's very hard to digest and probably not that cool, just because you want the reputation of being honest? Touche.
Well, if you're doing it just to have the reputation of being honest, no, I don't think there's value. I don't think there's value to
There's
that.
a fine line in there where I think it behooves everyone to just rein the horses in just before it goes over the cliff. And if you want to, I mean, Keith Richards on his deathbed, if he wants to like really do an expose, I could see that. I could see that working, but you know, you have to consider people have trusted you. You know, when you've slept with somebody, you've really had.
That's different, John. I'm not talking about throwing anybody under the bus, and I'm not talking about hurting anyone. I was talking more about a fun drug story than anything. And you know, there's Neil Gaiman, I think it was, who said that, you know, make good art, and he says that if we're not willing to jump off the cliff and say the uncomfortable and do that, you know, that's really what art is, when there are no reins.
Put yourself as the lone icon on the page of the subject, and then talk about that relentlessly. I'm not sure if that's art or just self-promotion.
Well,
no, you could like you were talking about that painting before, where I've got a ventriloquist with a small model ventriloquist dummy of Christ. And if you look at and it's got a wire halo at the top, and then and it's all about religion. And if you look at the painting closely enough.
I love that painting, by the way.
Yeah, somebody bought that.
Oh, yay.
A lot of money. And but if you look at the ventriloquist, he has also got like some wood in his neck, and he's a dummy too. So you've got this like absurdist thing. You've got this like very, very ironic thing about like religion, and as all being basic puppets. But you have to look at the painting you have to study the painting to get the message. I don't want to come out like it happens a lot now with these young hot stars. They're all talking. I read something the other day about there's like 5 really beautiful women. I mean, really beautiful young women. And they were answering questions on their favorite sexual position, you know, and it was like, are you kidding? You know, I mean, I mean, something that's that between you and one other person, and you're trading that to get headline. Something that
is not at all what I was talking about. But
what I'm saying is that there's some things that you just, if you lose those, you lose yourself.
Well, I agree with that completely. I wasn't talking about anything like that. I just thought maybe there might be a fun story about getting high before a show and fucking up on stage, or I don't know, whatever, something that happened in the course of your journey.
Those drug days came and went sort of. It's been decades, you know, it's thank God. I mean, how we all survived that stuff is, some people are still doing it.
Some people are still doing it. And by the way, it just dawned on me at this very moment that you're in Atlanta.
I know.
You are in the most glorious place in America this morning, and I'm sure you know why. And I hope that it's going to be very celebratory at your show tonight, because we had a huge victory.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Okay, Warnock won. Democracy reigns this morning.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes, this was a big runoff election in Georgia last night, and it was a
Yeah.
very, very close. Walker was ahead only an hour before the final numbers were counted, and it was very scary.
You
But
know,
Warnock did win.
you know, we were talking about it last night, me and Tim, when he picked me up at the airport, and me and Alan, we just had breakfast with Tim, and every African-American person I've met in Atlanta has been so open and equal and polite and welcoming. And it's like a different world down here. There's some real intelligence, and there's a real energy that I think is positive. And every time I've come here, I've felt the same way. So I think
you are literally going to be doing your live album in one of the most glorious days in Georgia's history. Truly, I can't tell you how big as an American, and you are, for all intents and purposes, I can't tell you how huge what happened last night is to America. So this is a momentous day. And also, I don't know if you know, because you were traveling yesterday, but the Trump organization, I hate saying that name, but they were convicted of on all counts of tax evasion and fraud. That happened yesterday too.
I saw that.
So
but I don't know what's going to happen with that. You know,
I know. He probably will be Teflon on that too, because it's not personal, but yes, but anyway, Georgia is everyone in America, well, not everyone, but many people in America are celebrating and very grateful to Georgia this morning.
Well, like I said, it's got an energy and a spiritual kind of, there's something on here that I haven't felt on the road this year. It's just been like, oh, you know, it's all right. You know, I like it here.
So, okay, so you're doing this live album now, and you're still doing some art. You just sold this. How recently had you done that piece of art?
I had that going on about 2 years ago, but I only put it up for sale about 6 months ago. But it was, you know, I think it was $2,500 or something. I got, you know, I mean, it's quite a big piece.
It's beautiful. Well, it's beautiful. It's powerful.
You know, I look at it. You know, you can always do better. But I'm just trying. You know, I did this interview with People magazine this week, and at the end of it, I talk about when I quit singing. But I really will go back to painting. I will. I probably will never pick up a guitar again. And
wait. What is this? Why is this? What?
Well, you can't keep doing it. You can't keep getting on a plane. You can't keep. What I said in People was that all the songs are in the same key as they were when they were written, right? And I'm not going to drop the keys because the song sounds sonically like it does because it's in A or G or whatever.
Right.
I'm not going to drop it down like from a B to a B flat. So when that happens, I think that's the tap on the shoulder. You know, I think after that, you know, it's like Bill Nighy in Still Crazy. Is it Still Crazy? And
love him.
Yeah, he's great. But I mean, there's a point where you're like,
no, I think you're talking about in Love Actually, when he keeps singing "Love is all around us," and he's singing that song over and over. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, but he did one before about a rock band that get back together. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Still Crazy, I think. But that's the same character, really. It's like this aging rock star, and he's like, but Love Actually is just, I mean, that.
He's so brilliant.
He's really great, you know. And he's, you know, I'm going that way. So I mean, I don't want to be hanging around when people are just killing it. You know, I don't want to be an antique.
But then I heard in the documentary, I heard your Joni say that the road is everything to you. And I believe you say in the documentary as well, that that's really where you live. That's where, you know,
somebody, I said this the other day, there's a Steve Earle line from the Fort Worth Blues, and it says, "You used to say the highway was your home. but we both know that that ain't true. And the highway is a corridor between two places. It's nowhere. The only place you ever land is where you're going to play, or a hotel. The rest of it, you're traveling. Your feet don't touch the ground. It's something you can get caught up in because you don't have to be responsible for daily stuff. You have people getting you from A to B, getting you a bowl of cornflakes or whatever. It's like, I love being out there and I love meeting people. I like people and I love singing with my band. But there'll be a time when it's just like, it was great. I think I'll just stay home today and paint, or I'll go and look at the ocean, or I'll write a book. I'll do something else with my life. I've been doing this for 50 years. Most people do it for like 5. My entire life has been spent making music. And when the spotlight was on me, I kind of rose to the occasion. I had some massive records. And when the spotlight pulled back and it was in the dark, I still made records that I think are better. I've enjoyed everything about my life. It's been an absolutely fantastic. I see your dog in the back.
Yes, that's Rufus.
I
Rufus.
actually put the dog to sleep. Yes.
No, he can't hear you. I've got you in my
Okay.
ears. Otherwise, he'd be.
That's
He'd
it.
be
I just wanted to say that it's been such a wonderful life. It doesn't always. I don't want to be in the spotlight right up to the. I want to disappear at some point. I do.
John, I love that you're saying this, and it's very timely because someone in my life has a musician partner who went out on the road for the first time on tour and came back and had a really hard time transitioning back to real life.
Yes.
Have you found that to be true, that when you're on the road and you don't have any responsibility and everybody's taking care of everything, and then you come home and you got to take out the garbage and you got to.
No, I like all that. I like going shopping with Joni or doing whatever it is. I like all the pedestrian stuff. I have friends all over Santa Monica and in England and New York, and I can take it or leave it. It's when I was in the babies, I remember coming home and I was almost plugged into the mains. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't watch TV. I was pacing around the room. That was the only time it's been like that. And the rest of the time I can come back, have dinner somewhere and just unwind. But I can switch it off.
Do you look forward to coming home? Like you're doing 2 shows and then you're coming home and you're going to be off for the rest of the year. Are you anticipating that with joy? Is that something you're looking forward to? Yeah,
I am. I might go to New York for a couple of days. I might even, if the train strike ends and it doesn't get snowed in, I might go and visit my mum.
Okay, so I want to talk about your mom, because the last time we chatted, 96, is she 96? 96.
She might be 97. Do you know, I've forgotten. It's the last week. I can't quite remember which is 96. But I might do that. But the way things are going at the moment, everything has just sort of coalesced. All these different things have all come together, and suddenly I'm almost out of my depth with interviews and offers, and with the documentary coming out.
I was going to say, isn't it very busy ahead for you with promoting the documentary?
Well, I'm not really promoting it. I'm just doing interviews when I'm asked to speak about what it's like to be interviewed. I refuse to do interviews to promote the documentary.
You're amazing.
That makes sense. I mean,
yes.
I told Scott Wright and all the people involved, you do it. It's your work. It's not mine. I'm the subject, but so what? I just, told you a few things and held it together. But
when was the first time you watched it?
6 months ago. They sent me a copy about 8 months ago, and I didn't watch it for like 2 months, 3 months. I wouldn't watch it. I mean, I'm in it. What's going to be in it that I haven't seen? But I just couldn't bring myself to watch it.
And how do you feel about it now that it's out, you've seen it?
Well, how would you feel? I mean, it's like going from being a young man, being a child, my parents, my brother Joe, all this stuff, my first wife, the babies, the madness of that life, and then
Mhm.
being number one, quitting, coming back, doing bad English, number one, quitting, whatever it is, and then Temple Bar, which for me was the watershed of all my work. And I mean, how do you? I'm astounded that somebody made the movie, and I know it's an interesting thing to some people. There's a lot that's left out, but what do you say about it? I mean,
Is it uncomfortable for you to watch yourself, or are you okay? Are you fine with that?
well, I've spent my whole life being interviewed and filmed and on stage,
Mhm.
and I can be dispassionate. I can step back and watch it and go like,
Mhm.
you know, it is what it is. But when somebody actually makes a movie about your life, or the music business, or the pandemic, or my part of the music business, through all the changes it's been through, where I am now, where I was then, I mean, that's your story. You would
Mhm.
like, obviously, to have gone in there and said, yeah, but this was more important than this. But it doesn't matter. I don't think I have any opinion.
Did you have those moments watching it where you said, "Oh, I wish that would have gotten in there," or
Yeah,
Mhm.
of course. But it
Mhm.
would have been a different documentary, and
Right.
it wouldn't have been as objective. Does this make sense? It does make sense.
Yes, of course it makes sense. And everything happens exactly as it's supposed to, right? We're both fatalists. We believe that. What
Absolutely.
came out was exactly what was meant to come out.
Yeah, yeah. And there'll be a consequence of that. I'll either have to write a book, or there'll be another one. There'll be part two.
Well,
Or
so let's talk about that book, because we talked about it last time. And I was listening to it again this morning just to remind myself, and you were saying that you couldn't write the book because it would be like epic, because there's so much to tell and there's too much to tell and all of that. But I want to encourage you again, you can write it all down. That doesn't mean you have to publish it all. You can edit it once you write it, but you just write it all and you put it all down, and then you can be the arbiter of what's important and what gets in there and what you take out and how it reads. But first of all, you're such a passionate reader yourself
yeah, but
that
I mean, speaking of that, I mean, I'm a songwriter, and I can put like lines that are like shouldn't necessarily be together, that somehow in a rhyme or something, and then I'm allowed to put a D minor chord behind it, or a D major chord behind it, and that shades the entire thing.
Mhm.
It's no longer just writing. And if you read like George Simenon, is the Maigret books, I mean, like everybody from, I mean, the most profound thinkers in Europe were reading his stories and thinking the most and there's and Hemingway, there's hardly any adjectives in. It's just like bang.
Well, Stephen King says don't use adjectives ever.
Well, I'm saying, I mean, but there's talent, and then there's you're meant to be a writer. I've written a short story recently, and I really think it's got something. And it's a long story, and it's kind of tragic, but it has a beautiful end, and it's really chaotic, and I think it's good. And
I'd love to read it, Johnson. I would love for you to
Well,
send
I
it to
tell you
me.
what, if I edit it and they get it right, I have a rough copy. I'll send you one. But I think I could write short stories, but to take on a life story, like I got a really profound sense of music and rhythm and intelligence from Keith Richards' book. And even more
Yes.
so, although I couldn't finish it once it got to Live Aid, Bruce Springsteen really had an eloquence and a command of lyric and a command of words. And he took me with him on in his story. Some people really have it, and then there's the ghost-written stuff that's absolute shit.
Yeah, that's crap. And you can tell when it's not somebody's true. But maybe that's your thing, John. Maybe because you were saying last time that you have so many aspects to your life and there's so many, maybe it is a collection of short stories. Maybe you capture your childhood in a story,
That's very good. Now that
You know, you've told me every time we've spoken that I have some good ideas. I'm telling you, John,
Oh,
we're on to something.
no, you're a super smart person. See,
No.
I didn't come across that. I didn't think of it like that. And yet,
Mhm.
the short story I wrote was in 5 parts about a guy getting drunk. His brother got kidnapped when he was a child and
Is it
molested.
fiction?
Yeah,
Mhm.
and this guy loses his mind in at his job, walks out of his job, goes to a pub in Soho, gets absolutely smashed, and it's all like taxis and hookers and Soho. He gets down to the south coast, gets
Mhm.
on a ferry. He gets in a fist fight in a pub, runs away, gets on the ferry to Dieppe, and gets to Dieppe, gets off, smashed, crashes in a park, gets through customs, crashes out on a park bench, looking for his brother, who's been kidnapped when he was about 6. And he goes up to this food stand. It's like a gypsy caravan, and gets a Calvados to try and sober up. Sits down. These 2 Apaches, they call them in France, the street thugs, eye him up, and he gets into a knife fight under a street lamp with these Apaches, and he's drunk already. He's shark bait, and
He's shark bait.
they kill him. And as he fades away, he meets his brother, who was 7 when he was 4, and they go home. But it's like it's a very involved 5-piece movement.
What was the impetus for this story? Do you know? Do you remember?
No, I was just emailing somebody that was, and I just sent him a story, and then I started writing chapters just to keep him amused. But it became, I could see it as a visual as I was writing it, and I didn't have to stop. It wasn't like what rhymes with cat. It was like I could do it. It was like singing.
And
But
that's the thing, John, when you sit down to write your story, it's going to be the same way. You're not going to have to rhyme with cat, and you're not going to have to stop and think. It's going to flow from your pen, from your brain
yes,
to
but
your pen.
I think it described Lancaster, my hometown. I mean, that would take some doing for the average mind to see where I was raised in a terrace cottage, looking into the countryside, and it falls away immediately into a valley with a road that goes up. I mean, and it's about a mile before it reaches the top. And there's a park, a huge, gigantic Victorian park opposite the front door. And behind the park, there's a mental asylum. In the middle of the park, there's a folly that looks like the Taj Mahal or St. Paul's. It's this wonder world of childhood, of ruined stables, forests, fields, and then in the background somewhere on a small record player, there's Elvis Presley. You know, it's just so many weird, disparate things.
John,
All
you've described that to me twice now, and you have described it perfectly both times. I see the whole thing before me. I can feel it. I can taste it. I can smell it. That is what good writing, that is what great writing is. You just did it.
yeah,
And
but
all you do is take that same thing and put it on the paper.
we have tone of voice and expression. To
Mhm.
really do that with just words. I mean, how could you capture the magical, the childhood happening as that is your environment?
Because it's the passion that comes out from here and here through here. You just did. I
Yes.
just felt you.
Well, because we're talking, but to write down on paper, I'm not sure. I like the idea of the thing with it, doing short stories and putting it all together. I get that, you know.
And somebody just wrote they would love an animated storybooks. That's something else you could do. That would be phenomenal. You could animate your stories, which would be incredible.
couldn't I? I could do like pages of drawings, and I could maybe do that. I think
And then Tony just said you could record it as an audiobook and let it flow. That's another
there
thing
you
you could
go.
do.
See, that's great. That's a great idea. I mean, I thought the other day, do you know, it's like when Dylan wrote his book, he wrote that in longhand and didn't stop. He just wrote the whole thing. It's like, but he kicks off one chapter and I think he's on an aircraft carrier somewhere in the Pacific or wherever it is, meeting John Waite. And meanwhile, back on the, and you suddenly go to this. I mean, I could understand jumping around inside the life.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that. But starting at A and trying to get to Z.
No, do your short, do the collection, make them animated, do the audiobook. I mean, there's lots of ways you could approach it here. And if you are seriously considering that time is coming sometime down the road that you're going to stop, you're going to get off the road, what a great project for you to have ahead of you.
Yeah. I always see myself in some small kind of like a vicarage, a stone house somewhere in the northwest of England, and by some countryside, growing roses, and the dog and a cat, and hopefully someone to love, and but listening to Radio 4 and painting and writing whatever comes into my mind. But I always think it's going to be away from the crowd.
Would you like to go back to England? Is that
when I go back, it's like it's unreal, the humor, and the people have such character and they're so funny. You forget, you walk into a pub and say, "Anne, how you doing?" And somebody will say something that's hysterically funny, that is completely unrehearsed. Some of it's fairly edgy and nobody takes offense. And it's kind of like they swear at each other, but the humor, you turn on the TV and it's just killer. There's something going on in England and Britain.
How far is Lancaster from London?
222 miles.
Maybe we'll have to take a day trip, and while we're there, and I'll have to go see that.
Lancaster Castle. I mean, the Lancaster Castle station is on a direct route to Glasgow from Euston. So it's only like 3 hours. And it's a wonderful trip. You can actually get off the train. You could spend the day in Lancaster. You could just see all these things that I've seen in my life. Then get back on the train and maybe go to Glasgow, city of art now, or go back to London and hit it and rock. But I think you're going to have a really, really wonderful time.
I'm going to pick your brain before we go. Yes, for some wonderful things.
Yeah.
I'm excited. John, I want to honor the fact that you have a show today, and I promised Tim that I would only hold you for an hour, and we're just hitting that now, and I want to respect it because I know you have a big night ahead of you. And I am so excited. I can't wait to hear about this show that you do tonight, because I'm telling you, they're going to be celebrating in Atlanta tonight. This is it. Georgians are getting so much love.
Yeah, no, I think it's like I said, I heard about the Trump thing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hear about this other thing. I mean, when you're traveling, you really are in a cocoon.
Yes.
But this interview has probably been the most off the hook I've done. We've really just rambled. We were talking about all sorts of different things, and I stopped thinking about how it would sound, and we were just having a conversation,
that's what we do every time, John. That's how we talk.
But I think today we certainly got off the track and wandered around, and it was great. I didn't realize that we'd gone off on so many different tangents, and that we'd hit so many different things,
Well, I enjoyed it immensely, as I always do when I speak with you. And I wish you a wonderful show tonight and tomorrow. I so look forward to the live album when it comes out. And I hope that when you're in town in your break, maybe we can have that coffee, have you up to the house.
That'd be wonderful. I'd like to hang out and continue the conversation. You're always very interesting.
Likewise, John. I just adore you. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Wonderful. For everybody out there, it's John Waite the Hard Way. It's fantastic. I streamed it on Amazon last night. I think it's also available on Apple, and it's very worthy, as are you. Thank you so much, John.
Bless you. Bye-bye.